You are standing on a precipice staring down a sheer cliff face while carrying 300 kilograms of highly volatile cargo strapped to your lower back. A literal ventriloquist doll dangling from your belt, whispering existential dread into your ear, and your boots are rapidly disintegrating because the rain itself accelerates the passage of time. Welcome to Nullplayer Paradox. I am Castigator and I also welcome you to the absolute sanity testing brilliance of Hideo Kojima, a man who looked at the entire concept of traditional video games and said, what if we made the infrastructure management deeply personal and profoundly terrifying? Death Stranding 2 on the beach takes everything that made the original look like a baseline tech demo and doubles down on the sheer beautiful madness of delivering packages across a broken planet. It turns out that when you hand a legendary author the keys to a game engine and let him rewrite a global apocalypse to reflect our own post pandemic isolation, you don't just get a sequel, you get an interactive cinematic endurance test that somehow feels completely fresh even 30 hours deep into the mud. Death Stranding 2 on the Beach is available for Windows and PlayStation 5, developed by Kojima Productions and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. To even begin processing this journey, we have to look at the literal foundation it is built upon. On a modern rig running at ultra settings with frames generated out of thin air, the world glides by with an almost unnatural smoothness, free from the stuttering and frame drops that usually plague massive open world ambitions. It is an incredibly well optimized playground, though if you dare to crank up the ray tracing to its absolute maximum limits just to see your reflection in a puddle, your central processing unit will immediately file a formal complaint, increasing its workload by 10% and turning distant shadows into a blurry, indistinct soup. Driving a heavy vehicle through the wilderness reveals the occasional fleeting moment of distant vegetation flickering or popping into existence, a minor optical illusion that dissolves the second you stop moving. Yet, the only true structural breakdown occurs right at the climax of a massive late game encounter against a towering mechanical monolith where a sudden catastrophic blast of fire triggers a total frozen standstill. It is as if the engine itself looked at the sheer volume of particle effects and decided it needed a momentary crisis of faith before letting you finish the fight. That technical stability mostly carries over into the lack of digital poltergeist. Though Kojima's universe still harbors a few ghosts in the machine, you can spend 20 minutes meticulously painting your favorite delivery truck a brilliant shade of crimson, only for the subsequent automated garage cutscene to proudly display the exact same faded factory default paint job you just tried to erase. A tiny harmless continuity error that briefly breaks the illusion of your absolute corporate control over your fleet. Far more distracting is the audio phantom that haunts the ending of sentences, particularly when you are listening to detailed delivery orders or trying to have a quite deeply personal conversation with a living puppet in your private room. The final words of dialogue frequently get clipped into absolute silence.
I can only assume that at present he lacks the means to set the last stranding in. So instead, he settled for trying to pit people against one another so they can tear the world apart for him. The weapons factory was all the more reason why we need to rely upon the rope that is the chiral network to bring the whole continent.
A strange casualty of high refresh rates, frame generation, or complex three dimensional audio processing. It turns out that navigating a fractured reality means sometimes you just have to guess what your floating doll friend was trying to tell you before his voice box collapsed into the digital ether. Controlling your lone courier remains an exercise in momentum, gravity, and occasional frustration. The basic inputs are intuitive enough to handle, but the actual physics of movement can transition into pure jank without a moment's notice. Trying to maneuver a massive off road pickup truck from a dead stop frequently results in the vehicle hurtling forward in a completely straight tangent, utterly refusing to turn or hold a curve until it has already gathered a terrifying amount of forward momentum. It makes navigating tight rocky passes feel less like driving an advanced piece of tactical machinery and more like steering an angry, motorized brake that only understands the concept of a straight line once it stops sitting still. Yet all of that mechanical friction exists solely to serve an absolute titan of a narrative. The story takes the familiar epic scale of its predecessor and twists it onto something far more sinister, wrapping the journey in an atmosphere that routinely crosses over into pure, heart stopping horror. If you carried the emotional baggage of the first game, the narrative beats here land with the weight of physical blow, introducing a massive cast of mysterious new figures while dragging Sam Potter bridges far beyond the borders of his previous home to connect global community spanning all the way to Australia. It is a deeply philosophical, intense narrative that weaves every single bizarre mystery, fourth wall breaking nod, and existential question into a seamless, beautiful tapestry by the time the credits roll. It leaves you with a profound sense of awe, even as you realize you are watching a protagonist endure so much physical and psychological mystery that you couldn't possibly bear to watch him suffer through a third outing unless the torch is finally passed to the next generation.
Those who dare disrespect pizza do not deserve.
The auditory landscape mirrors this narrative intensity, providing a punchy, impactful soundscape layered with an absolutely incredible musical score. The tragedy, however, lies in the lack of individual volume sliders for different audio channels. You will find yourself straining to hear a quiet whispered piece of vital lore through your speakers, only for the game to immediately transition into a massive action sequence or an explosive musical cue that blasts through your room at an absolutely deafening volume. It turns out the true enemy of a courier isn't just the terrain, it's the sudden violent shifts in dynamic range that threaten to shatter your eardrums while you're just trying to enjoy a quiet walk in the rain. That walk at least takes place in what might be the most breathtaking interactive world ever constructed for a video game. The environments feel impossibly real, featuring a staggering variety of distinct regions where every single element, from the pooling water to raging sandstorms, forest fires, and sudden earthquakes, actively alters your physical movement. The terrain remembers your existence if you find yourself walking the exact same path repeatedly to complete deliveries. A visible worn trail physically forms in the earth beneath your boots, carving your legacy into the dirt. Traversing these spaces requires constant vigilance, especially with terrifying new otherworldly entities and predatory creatures stalking the wilderness, turning a simple journey across the most beautifully rendered, snow capped peaks ever put in a game into a tense exercise in survival. The brilliance of the gameplay loop lies in how it refines this slow paced, methodical routine of planning a route, packing your gear, making the trek, and resting up to do it all over again. It is an experience built entirely around challenging your wits, patience, and endurance, making every single step forward feel like a genuine hard won triumph that leaves standard, painfully punishing combat games looking shallow by comparison. However, the moment you unlock fast travel and begin aggressive aggressively pursuing standard side orders to upgrade various facilities, the illusion stutters. You quickly find yourself trapped in an endless loop of menus, cargo loading screens, and repetitive animations that eat away at your playtime, dragging the pacing down to an absolute crawl and making you desperate to stop staring at an interface and just get back to the actual act of walking. Visually, the game operates on a level that feels years ahead of its contemporaries, showcasing a level of presentation and psychotic attention to detail that borders on the obsessive. The environment leaves physical scars on your gear and appearance. Timefall rain rapidly rusts your packages, dust storms coat your equipment, and Sam himself becomes visually haggard, bruised, and exhausted by a hard journey, prompting NPCs at delivery terminals to actively comment on his terrible state and urge him to take a break. Nearly every single emergent possibility in the world seems to have dedicated custom cutscene to keep your immersion completely unbroken. The only visual blemish occurs when you step into incredibly dense, grass-heavy forest where the anti-aliasing and upscaling algorithms struggle with defined geometry, causing the vegetation to look slightly fuzzy and remind you that you are in fact still looking at digital simulation. If you love tailoring your experience, the depth of customization here is an absolute dream, offering an endless array of unlockable backpack accessories that provide genuine mechanical advantages, vehicle logos, and camo options for those who wear their brand loyalties on their sleeve. Unlocking a full Republic of Gamers themed suit and cap injects a surreal, passionate energy into the track, making the act of hauling cargo through a wasteland feel infinitely more epic. Every tool, weapon, loadout, and vehicle can be tweaked to your exact specifications, provided you are willing to explore the world and unlock them. When diplomacy fails, the combat transitions into something deeply familiar to anyone who grew up playing tactical espionage operations, offering a much more aggressive, action heavy experience than before. You are given an extensive arsenal of firearms, decoy holograms, and silent takedowns, letting you ghost through mechanical patrol forces or simply go guns blazing. Unlike the first game, which slowly coddled you through its mechanics, this sequel throws you directly into massive, intensely cinematic boss fights within the opening hours. Though these encounters can occasionally feel intentionally slowed down just to preserve the director's cinematic framing, ultimately, this entire experience amounts to something deeply therapeutic and profoundly unique, sprinkled with brilliant, fourth wall shattering Easter eggs that nod to Phantom Pain's Kojima Productions and games where enemies don't conveniently dissolve into gold coins. It is a game that deliberately demands you slow down and feel the true weight of a lonely world. If you choose to brave this journey entirely solo without the aid of online player structures, the best path forward is to completely ignore the trap of spending your finite resources on building massive roads. Instead, focus on scattering a dense network of generators along your favorite paths to keep your trucks alive. Maximize your weight carrying gadgets and never stop your main story progression just to clear out standard orders, because those delivery requests will infinitely regenerate until the end of time. Use vehicles to scout the longer, smoother parts rather than killing your knees on a short rocky cliff, and let yourself get lost in the interactive cinema. This journey concludes not with a whimper but with the definitive realization that we have witnessed something truly extraordinary. For delivering an unparalleled masterpiece of interactive storytelling, mechanical depth, and sheer artistic audacity, this experience earns an overall final breakdown score of 95%, officially securing the pinnacle of a single player experience award. That is all for this video. Thank you for your support. I will greatly appreciate a sub to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Keep watching, keep playing. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to like the video, comment, or subscribe for more. It really helps the channel out and I truly appreciate it a lot. Take care, keep watching, and keep gaming.